We're going to try to build out a discipleship model that will help us take everything we've learned and apply it to discipling others and also being discipled by others. And it's really very simple. I'm just focusing on God's goodness. I'm giving thanks as a natural expression of my life, and it calls attention to God's purposes and God's power at work. In other words, it just awakens in me this awareness that God's at work, that I see God's purposes more clearly as I give thanks. I align my life to it, and God's purpose and power is advanced. And as I do that, I'm just working my way through life, and I'm doing it with other people. And it's natural. It's natural because I'm calling attention to all that God has done and is doing. And it provides a natural framework for discipleship. Now, this video builds on what we've just done. The previous video provides a theology, just an introduction, a simple beginning look at a theology of God's goodness, where we looked at the character of God, the goodness of God displayed in creation, and then the goodness of God displayed in Christ in the work of salvation. Now, here it is. The picture is there's a river, and it's rushing. These are rapids that we have to cross. A lot of dangers in life, a lot of peril, and we have to cross this to get to the other side. But God's with us. We're experiencing God's goodness and kingdom right now. And God has placed these stones all along the way of evidence of His goodness. Now, I'm going to call these stones the character of God, who God is, the work of Christ here in the middle, salvation, and creation. We see God's goodness in all three of these. We built these out in our little theology. The problem is, I can't know God apart from Christ, apart from His saving work. He opens my eyes, gives me spiritual sight to behold and to know God and His character. And He also helps me see God and know God as revealed in creation. And here's the model. It's very simple. Here I am. I'm going through life, and I'm just calling attention to the goodness of God in creation as I come to know God in His character and how I experience God, and then the saving work of God that freely comes to me in Christ. And just take this image that here we are, you and I, we're crossing the river, we're holding hands. I step on a stone, and then I kind of balance you as you step to one of these stones. And here we are, we're just going back and forth, traversing across this river. And, you know, I will say to you, hey, there's something really beautiful about your life. There's a real discernment that God's given you. You're a very thoughtful person. I thank God that He made you and that He's helped you to cultivate this specific aspect in your life. So I'm just kind of stepping on that stone, right? And holding your hand, and we're conscious that Jesus did this. But a thought enters your mind, and you say, yeah, that's great, but a lot of times that's not discernment at all. That I can be really negative. I can see the bad in everything. It goes all the way back to my childhood. I was betrayed by one of my parents, and you began to tell me about some of the dark things that have happened in this river. And it becomes very vivid. I'm feeling it with you. Now, what we want to do in those moments is we want to validate those emotions, right? But we want to learn, we're redressing the landscape of our minds. To borrow from Dallas Willard, the lifescape of how we see all of life. I don't want to spend all of my time looking down into those deep waters and get lost in them so that I get carried away by the current. No, let's come back and see God at work. Let's look for the evidences of God's goodness in creation, the expressions of his character, and specifically how God has brought redemption. So we have this opportunity to say, that betrayal by your parent has no doubt impacted you very deeply. But look at how God has given Jesus to bring healing in your life from that deep pain, and how God has adopted you into his family, and that you call God Father, and how he's bringing healing to that wound. But not just that. It's not just that place is now becoming whole in Christ. But more than that, God is using that very thing for good. How there's now a redemptive element to your discernment. There's a redemptive faith that God's implanting and growing in you, where you have faith and discernment and wisdom to help other people cross this river. And together, we're growing in our knowledge of God, our knowledge of ourselves, our knowledge of the gospel, with this accent on thanksgiving as it expresses the goodness of God in all of life. Now, just reduce it down. Simplify it in this way. Be intentional and very aware of calling attention to and giving thanks to God in these three categories of God's character, salvation through Christ, and creation, and see if it doesn't provide for you natural outlets for you to follow Jesus together in community.